In a peaceful suburban neighborhood surrounded by lush green hills and tall shady trees, life flowed at a calm and unhurried pace. The streets were lined with colorful houses, each with its own little garden bursting with flowers. Children played on the sidewalks, laughter filling the air, while birds chirped happily in the background. It was the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbors, and kindness seemed to be woven into the fabric of daily life. Among the residents of this idyllic community was Keanu Reeves, a man whose fame stretched far beyond the boundaries of the small town. Known worldwide as an actor, Keanu carried himself with humility and grace that set him apart from many other celebrities. Despite his success, he remained grounded, choosing to live simply and quietly. People admired him not just for his talent, but also for his compassion and generosity. He often went out of his way to help others, whether it was lending a listening ear or supporting charitable causes close to his heart. One of the things Keanu cherished most in life was animals. Over the years, he had developed a deep love for dogs, finding joy in their loyalty and unconditional affection. Recently, he had decided to open his home to a new furry companion, a scruffy terrier mix named Daisy. She was a rescue dog, her past marked by hardship and neglect, but her spirit remained unbroken. With big, soulful eyes and a wagging tail that never seemed to stop, Daisy quickly won over Keanu's heart. Every day, Keanu made it a point to take Daisy for long walks along the scenic paths that wound through the neighborhood. These walks weren't just about exercise. They were moments of connection, a chance for Keanu to bond with his beloved pet and enjoy the beauty of nature together. On this particular afternoon, the sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over everything it touched. The air smelled fresh, carrying hints of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. As they strolled side by side, Keanu couldn't help but smile, watching Daisy sniff excitedly at every bush and tree, her nose twitching with curiosity. The two of them eventually reached a quiet stretch of road where tall oak trees formed a natural canopy overhead. Birds flitted between branches and the sound of rustling leaves created a soothing melody. Keanu paused near a park bench, allowing Daisy to explore freely. She trotted ahead, her tiny paws padding softly against the pavement, stopping occasionally to investigate interesting smells or chase after a fluttering butterfly. Watching her playfulness brought a sense of peace to Keanu's mind, a brief escape from the busyness of his career and public life. But as they enjoyed this tranquil moment, neither Keanu nor Daisy noticed the distant rumble of a motorcycle engine, growing louder. Around the bend came a figure astride a gleaming Harley-Davidson, its chrome parts catching the sunlight. The rider was Marcus Kane, a man whose reputation in the neighborhood preceded him. Tall and muscular, with a leather jacket, adorned with patches and tattoos visible on his arms, Marcus cut an intimidating figure. His presence often stirred unease among the locals, who whispered about his reckless behavior and abrasive attitude. Marcus thrived on chaos, finding amusement in disrupting the harmony of the otherwise peaceful town. He loved the thrill of speeding, down narrow streets ignoring traffic rules and scaring pedestrians with his loud engine. Today was no different. As he approached the stretch of road where Keanu and Daisy were enjoying their walk, he revved the throttle, sending a deafening roar echoing through the area. Startled by the sudden noise, Daisy froze mid-step, her ears perking up in alarm. Before she could react further, Marcus swerved dangerously close to her, his tires skidding across the pavement. For a moment, time seemed to slow down. Keanu turned, his head sharply, his eyes widening in disbelief as he saw what was happening. Daisy yelped in fear, her body trembling as she instinctively tried to leap away from the looming threat. But instead of continuing onward, Marcus did something unthinkable. He deliberately kicked out with his heavy boot, striking Daisy squarely in the side. The force of the blow sent her tumbling onto the ground, her small frame rolling helplessly before coming to a stop several feet away. A collective gasp rose from the few bystanders who had witnessed the horrifying scene. Some shouted angrily. After Marcus, their voices filled with shock and outrage, but he merely laughed mockingly, revving his engine one last time before speeding off into the distance. Dust kicked up behind him, leaving behind only silence and the faint smell of burnt rubber. Keanu stood frozen for a split second, his heart pounding in his chest. Then, without hesitation, he rushed to Daisy's side, dropping to his knees beside her motionless form. Her eyes were wide with pain and confusion, and soft whimpers escaped her throat as she struggled to rise. Gently, Keanu scooped her into his arms, cradling her protectively against his chest. His normally calm demeanor gave way to a storm of emotions, anger, sorrow, and an overwhelming need to ensure Daisy was safe. Passers-by gathered around, offering words of comfort and concern. One elderly woman placed a reassuring hand on Keanu's shoulder, her own eyes brimming with tears. "That poor dog," she murmured, shaking her head in disbelief. Another neighbor pulled out their phone, already dialing the local animal hospital, to alert them of the situation. Despite the chaos swirling around him, Keanu focused solely on Daisy, whispering soothing words to her as he prepared to carry her to safety. The once peaceful afternoon had been shattered in an instant, replaced by a cloud of tension and distress. Yet even amidst the turmoil, there was a flicker of determination in Keanu's eyes. This wasn't just about Daisy. It was about standing up for all those who couldn't defend themselves. As he carefully made his way back toward home, cradling Daisy close, Keanu vowed silently that justice would prevail. No act of cruelty, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, would go unanswered. As Keanu hurried back home with Daisy cradled gently in his arms, the weight of what had just happened pressed heavily on his heart. Her soft whimpers tugged at his emotions, and every step he took felt heavier than the last. The peaceful afternoon, that had started with laughter and sunshine, now seemed like a distant memory, replaced by an unsettling silence broken only by the faint rustle of leaves and the occasional honk of a car passing by. Once inside, Keanu wasted no time. He carefully placed Daisy on a soft blanket in the living room, her small body trembling as she tried to curl into herself. Her big, trusting eyes stared up at him, filled with confusion and pain. Keanu knelt beside her, his hands moving tenderly over her fur to check for injuries. "It's okay, girl," he whispered, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside. You're safe now. I've got you." Daisy whimpered again, her tail twitching weakly as if trying to wag but lacking the strength. Keanu's jaw tightened as he noticed a reddish mark forming on her side where Marcus had kicked her. It was clear she was hurting, both physically and emotionally. Without wasting another moment, Keanu grabbed his phone and called the local veterinarian, explaining the situation urgently. The vet assured him they'd be ready to examine Daisy as soon as he arrived. While waiting for the appointment, Keanu did everything he could to comfort Daisy. He fetched a damp cloth to clean her paws and offered her water from her favorite bowl. But even though she licked at the water feebly, it was obvious she wasn't herself. Normally full of energy and curiosity, Daisy now lay still, her spirit visibly shaken. Seeing her like this tore at Keanu's heart. He had grown incredibly attached to her since adopting her, and the thought of anyone intentionally harming her made his blood boil. Neighbors who had witnessed the incident began arriving one by one, their faces etched with concern. Mrs. Peterson, the elderly woman who often stopped to chat during Keanu's walks with Daisy, knocked softly on the door. When Keanu opened it, she held out a homemade blanket. "I thought this might help keep her warm," she said softly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. That poor little thing didn't deserve that. Keanu accepted the blanket gratefully, wrapping it around Daisy as he thanked Mrs. Peterson. Other neighbors followed suit, bringing treats, toys, and words of support. Some shared stories of how much they loved seeing Keanu and Daisy together during their daily walks, describing them as a picture of happiness. Their kindness touched Keanu deeply, reminding him that he wasn't alone in this fight. This wasn't just about him or Daisy. It was about standing up against cruelty wherever it reared its ugly head. As word spread through the neighborhood, so did outrage. People gathered outside Keanu's house, discussing what had happened and brainstorming ways to ensure something like this never occurred again. Someone suggested reaching out to local authorities, while another neighbor mentioned checking security cameras nearby to see if they had captured the incident. Keanu listened intently, grateful for their solidarity. Together, they decided to collect evidence and file a formal complaint against Marcus Kane. Later that evening, after ensuring Daisy was settled comfortably in the car, Keanu drove her to the veterinary clinic. The staff greeted them warmly, already aware of the situation thanks to Keanu's earlier call. They quickly ushered Daisy into an examination room, where a kind veterinarian named Dr. Emily Carter began assessing her condition. Keanu stayed close, refusing to leave Daisy's side as Dr. Carter worked. Dr. Carter examined Daisy thoroughly, running gentle hands over her body to identify any hidden injuries. After a few tense minutes, she turned to Keanu with a reassuring smile. "She's a tough little fighter," she said. "There's some bruising on her ribs, but thankfully nothing appears to be broken. We'll give her medication to manage the pain and swelling, and with rest, she should recover fully." Relief washed over Keanu, though his anger toward Marcus remained undiminished. While Daisy rested in a cozy corner of the clinic, Keanu stepped outside to make a few calls. First, he contacted the local police department, providing them with details of the attack and urging them to take action. Then, he reached out to friends who worked in animal welfare organizations, asking for advice on how best to handle the situation. Determined to hold Marcus accountable, Keanu also posted about the incident on social media, sharing photos of Daisy and explaining what had happened. The post went viral almost instantly. Fans of Keanu flooded the comment section with messages of support, expressing their outrage over Marcus's actions. Many praised Keanu for speaking out and encouraged him to pursue justice not only for Daisy, but for all animals subjected to such cruelty. Others tagged local news outlets, hoping to bring even more attention to the case. Within hours, hashtags like "Cheer Justice for Daisy" and "Cheering Stop Animal Cruelty" began trending online. Back at home later that night, Keanu sat quietly beside Daisy, who had been given a clean bill of health and allowed to return home. She nestled into her bed, her breathing slow and steady as sleep finally claimed her. Keanu stroked her head gently, his mind racing with thoughts of the day's events. Though relieved that Daisy would recover, he couldn't shake the image of Marcus's smug grin as he sped away after kicking her. It wasn't just the act itself that angered Keanu. It was the lack of remorse, the blatant disregard for life. Unable to sit still, Keanu paced the room, replaying the scene in his mind. He thought about how fragile trust was, especially for animals like Daisy who had already endured so much hardship before finding a loving home. To have that trust shattered so violently was heartbreaking. And yet, as angry as he felt, Keanu refused to let bitterness consume him. Instead, he channeled his emotions into determination. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about sending a message that cruelty would not be tolerated. Over the next few days, Keanu threw himself into advocating for Daisy's case. He visited neighbors to gather statements and reviewed security footage provided by kind-hearted residents. One camera had captured Marcus's license plate clearly, giving authorities the information they needed to track him down. Meanwhile, Keanu continued updating his followers online, keeping them informed about the progress of the investigation. His transparency resonated deeply with people, inspiring many to share similar stories of witnessing or experiencing animal abuse. The community rallied around Keanu and Daisy. Marcus remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around him. Confident in his ability to intimidate others into silence, he carried on with his usual routine, oblivious to the fact that his identity had been exposed. Little did he know, his reckless actions were about to catch up with him in ways he could never have anticipated. Though exhausted from the whirlwind of activity, Keanu found solace in knowing that he wasn't fighting alone. The overwhelming support from strangers and friends alike reminded him of the power of collective action. Every message of encouragement, every shared post, and every donation to animal shelters in Daisy's name fueled his resolve. No matter what challenges lay ahead, Keanu knew one thing for certain. Daisy's suffering would not go unnoticed, and Marcus would answer for what he had done. As the days passed, Keanu's determination to seek justice for Daisy grew stronger. He poured his energy into gathering evidence and working closely with local authorities to ensure that Marcus Kane would face consequences for his cruel actions. The overwhelming support from the community and strangers online gave him strength, but it also reminded him of the importance of staying focused and disciplined. This wasn't just about avenging Daisy. It was about setting an example, a message. The cruelty would not be tolerated. The first step in holding Marcus accountable came when Keanu received a call from Detective Harris, the officer assigned to investigate the case. "We've identified the suspect based on the license plate footage you provided," Harris explained over the phone. "His name is Marcus Kane, and we're preparing to bring him in for questioning." Hearing those words brought a mix of relief and resolve to Keanu. Finally, progress was being made. But he knew this was only the beginning of what promised to be a challenging process. Keanu spent hours poring over documents, statements, and photos, ensuring that every detail of the incident was meticulously recorded. He met with Detective Harris multiple times at the police station, going over timelines and clarifying any inconsistencies. Each meeting reinforced Keanu's belief that accountability mattered, not just for Daisy, but for all animals who suffered silently under the hands of abusers like Marcus. Though Keanu had never sought out conflict or confrontation, he couldn't stand idly by while someone got away with such senseless violence. Meanwhile, the public outcry continued to grow. Social media platforms buzzed with updates about the case, with hashtags like #Justice for Daisy trending globally. Animal welfare organizations reached out to Keanu, offering resources and legal assistance to strengthen the case against Marcus. Thousands of people signed petitions demanding stricter penalties for animal abuse, while others organized fundraisers to support shelters and rescue groups. Keanu was humbled by the sheer volume of support pouring in from all corners of the world. One evening, as Keanu scrolled through messages from fans sharing their own stories of animal cruelty, he felt a deep connection to the cause. Many wrote about pets they had lost due to neglect or abuse, while others expressed gratitude for Keanu shining a light on an issue often overlooked. One message stood out in particular. "Thank you for speaking up for those who can't speak for themselves. Your courage gives us hope." These words stayed with Keanu long after he turned off his phone. They reminded him why he had taken on this fight. Not because he craved attention or drama, but because silence in the face of injustice was unacceptable. Every story he read fueled his resolve to see this through until the very end. Back in the neighborhood, tensions simmered as news of Marcus's involvement spread. Some residents whispered nervously, fearing retaliation if Marcus discovered who had spoken to the police. Others, emboldened by Keanu's leadership, openly condemned Marcus's behavior, refusing to let fear dictate their actions. A group of neighbors even organized a peaceful protest outside the local courthouse, carrying signs that read, "Protect our animals," and "Cruelty has no place here." Their unity sent a powerful message. No one was above the law. Despite the mounting pressure, Marcus remained oblivious to the storm brewing around him. Confident in his ability to intimidate others, he carried on with his reckless lifestyle, speeding through streets and revving his motorcycle engine late at night. To him, the incident with Daisy was nothing more than a fleeting moment of amusement, an act so minor that it didn't warrant second thought. He failed to realize how deeply his actions had impacted not only Daisy and Keanu, but also the entire community. It wasn't until 2 uniformed officers showed up at his doorstep one afternoon that reality finally hit Marcus. Startled, he opened the door halfway, squinting against the sunlight. "Can I help you?" he asked gruffly, his tone laced with irritation. The officers introduced themselves and informed him that he was being investigated for animal cruelty. They requested that he accompany them to the station for questioning. Marcus's initial reaction was denial. "What are you talking about?" he snapped, crossing his arms defensively. "I didn't do anything wrong." When the officers mentioned the security footage capturing his license plate and described the specific details of the attack, his bravado faltered slightly. Still, he refused to admit guilt, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. "Look, maybe I scared the dog a little, but it's not like I meant to hurt it," he muttered dismissively. At the station, Marcus sat stiffly in an interrogation room, his leather jacket creaking as he shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Across the table, Detective Harris laid out the evidence piece by piece: witness statements, photographs of Daisy's injuries, and the damning video footage showing Marcus deliberately kicking her. As each piece of evidence was presented, Marcus's confidence wavered further. For the first time, cracks began to show in his tough exterior. When Keanu arrived at the station later that day for a formal statement, he found himself seated in a small conference room adjacent to where Marcus was being questioned. Though separated by walls, the weight of the situation hung heavily in the air. Keanu took a deep breath before recounting the events of that fateful afternoon. The peaceful walk interrupted by the roar of a motorcycle, the terror in Daisy's eyes, and the sickening thud of Marcus's boot connecting with her fragile body. His voice trembled slightly as he described finding Daisy injured and trembling on the pavement, but he maintained composure, knowing how crucial his testimony was. Detective Harris listened intently, jotting down notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. Afterward, she thanked Keanu for his cooperation and assured him that they were doing everything possible to ensure justice was served. As Keanu left the station, he couldn't shake the image of Marcus sitting sullenly in the interrogation room. Despite his anger, Keanu felt a flicker of something unexpected: curiosity. What drove someone like Marcus to act so callously? Was it ignorance, arrogance, or something deeper? Over the following weeks, the investigation progressed steadily. The district attorney reviewed the evidence and decided there was enough to press charges against Marcus for animal cruelty. A court date was set, and news of the trial sparked another wave of public interest. Supporters of Keanu and Daisy rallied outside the courthouse during pre-trial hearings, holding banners and chanting slogans advocating for stricter laws protecting animals. Journalists camped out nearby, eager to cover every development in the high-profile case. Throughout this time, Keanu remained steadfast, balancing his advocacy work with caring for Daisy. Her recovery was slow but steady, and though she still flinched at loud noises, her playful spirit gradually returned. Watching her wag her tail again filled Keanu with hope, reminding him of the resilience animals possess despite the hardships they endured. It also strengthened his commitment to ensuring that Daisy's suffering wouldn't be in vain. As the IE trial approached, Keanu prepared himself mentally and emotionally for what lay ahead. Testifying in court wouldn't be easy, especially given the scrutiny that came with being a public figure. But he knew it was necessary, not just for Daisy's sake, but for all creatures who relied on humans to protect them. With the support of his loved ones and the countless strangers cheering him on, Keanu felt ready to face whatever challenges awaited him. Little did he know, the courtroom battle would reveal truths about Marcus that none of them could have anticipated, and perhaps offer a glimmer of redemption in the most unexpected place. The day of the trial arrived, bringing with it a mix of anticipation and tension. Outside the courthouse, reporters jostled for position, microphones in hand, eager to capture every word spoken by Keanu Reeves or his legal team. Supporters of II, Daisy and animal rights activists gathered nearby, holding signs that read, "Justice for Daisy and no more cruelty." The atmosphere was electric, charged with emotion as people waited anxiously to see how the case would unfold. Inside the courtroom, the air was quieter but no less intense. Rows of wooden benches stretched toward the front, where the judge's bench stood tall and imposing. Keanu sat calmly beside his attorney, dressed simply yet respectfully. His face betrayed little emotion, though those who knew him well could see the flicker of determination in his eyes. Across the aisle, Marcus Kane slouched in his seat, his usual swagger replaced by unease. He glanced around nervously, clearly unaccustomed to being on the receiving end of so much scrutiny. As the proceedings began, the prosecutor opened with a powerful statement about the importance of protecting animals from harm. She described Daisy's injuries, showing enlarged photos of her bruised side and recounting witness accounts of the brutal kick delivered by Marcus. Her words painted a vivid picture of the pain inflicted not only on Daisy, but also on Keanu, who had adopted her as a rescue dog, hoping to give her a second chance at happiness. The courtroom fell silent, the gravity of the situation sinking in for everyone present. When it was Keanu's turn to testify, all eyes turned to him. Standing up, he walked steadily to the witness stand, his posture upright and composed. Though he had faced countless interviews and public appearances throughout his career, this moment felt different, more personal, more meaningful. As he raised his right hand to swear an oath, he glanced briefly at Daisy, who sat quietly beside his attorney, her tail wagging faintly in recognition. It was a small gesture, but it gave him strength. The prosecutor guided Keanu through the events of that fateful afternoon, asking him to describe everything in detail. Keanu spoke clearly, his voice steady as he recounted their peaceful walk, interrupted by the roar of Marcus's motorcycle. He paused when describing the moment Daisy was kicked, his jaw tightening slightly as he relived the horror of seeing her tumble across the pavement. "I've never felt anger like that before," he admitted softly, his gaze fixed on the jury. "Not because of what happened to me, but because of what happened to her." His testimony resonated deeply with those listening. Even some members of the jury nodded sympathetically, visibly moved by his sincerity. When the defense attorney cross-examined Keanu, attempting to cast doubt on whether Marcus had truly intended to hurt Daisy, Keanu remained calm and unwavering. "Intent doesn't change the outcome," he replied firmly. "Whether it was deliberate or reckless, the result is the same. An innocent animal suffered." After Keanu stepped down, other witnesses took the stand, including neighbors who had seen the incident and Dr. Emily Carter, the veterinarian who treated Daisy. Each account added weight to the prosecution's case, leaving little room for ambiguity. By the time the prosecution rested, the evidence against Marcus seemed overwhelming. Finally, it was Marcus's turn to speak. Called to the stand by his own attorney, he shifted uncomfortably under the spotlight, avoiding eye contact with both the jury and Keanu. At first, he tried to downplay the incident, claiming it had been an accident, a split-second reaction to Daisy darting too close to his bike. But as the prosecutor pressed him with questions, inconsistencies in his story began to surface. Why had security footage shown him swerving deliberately toward Daisy? Why had he laughed afterward instead of stopping to check if she was okay? Marcus grew increasingly flustered, his answers becoming defensive and disjointed. For the first time, cracks appeared in his tough exterior. When asked directly if he regretted his actions, he hesitated, then muttered something vague about not meaning any real harm. The lack of genuine remorse was palpable, and it didn't go unnoticed by the jury. Following the testimonies, the judge ordered a brief recess before closing arguments. During this break, Keanu found himself standing near Marcus in the hallway, outside the courtroom. Their eyes met briefly, and for a moment neither man said anything. Then, surprising even himself, Keanu broke the silence. "Why did you do it?" he asked quietly, his tone devoid of anger but heavy with curiosity. Marcus blinked, caught off guard by the question. After a long pause, he shrugged awkwardly. "I don't know," he mumbled. "It was stupid. I wasn't thinking." Keanu studied him for a moment, searching for signs of sincerity. What he saw wasn't malice, but rather emptiness, a void filled with poor choices and misplaced bravado. Though it didn't excuse Marcus's behavior, it offered a glimpse into the mindset behind the cruelty. "You have a chance to make things right," Keanu said finally, his voice low but firm. "Do something meaningful with this. For Daisy. For yourself." Marcus looked away, his expression unreadable. Whether Keanu's words made an impact remained unclear, but the exchange left an impression on both men. As they returned to the courtroom separately, Keanu felt a strange sense of closure. Not because justice had been served yet, but because he had confronted Marcus directly, human to human. The closing arguments began shortly after. The prosecutor urged the jury to consider the broader implications of their decision, emphasizing that leniency would send the wrong message about accountability for acts of cruelty. Meanwhile, Marcus's attorney pleaded for mercy, arguing that his client's actions, while reckless, did not warrant severe punishment. The courtroom grew tense as the judge instructed the jury to deliberate carefully, weighing the facts without bias. Hours passed as the jury deliberated behind closed doors. Outside, supporters waited anxiously, clutching banners and praying for a favorable verdict. Inside, Keanu sat silently, his thoughts drifting to Daisy. He imagined her curled up, at home, blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding here. Her resilience inspired him, reminding him why he had taken on this fight in the first place. Finally, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty of animal cruelty. A wave of relief washed over Keanu, followed by a surge of gratitude for the justice system, for the community's support, and for Daisy's recovery. As the judge announced Marcus's sentence, community service at an animal shelter, mandatory anger management classes, and a hefty fine, Keanu felt a sense of vindication. This wasn't just a win for Daisy. It was a victory for compassion over cruelty. Though the trial had ended, Keanu knew the work wasn't done. Justice for Daisy was one step forward, but there were countless other animals still suffering silently, waiting for someone to speak up for them. With renewed purpose, Keanu vowed to continue advocating for their protection, using his platform to shine a light on issues often overlooked. And as he left the courthouse, surrounded by cheering supporters and flashing cameras, he carried with him the hope that stories like Daisy's could inspire change, one heart at a time. The weeks following the trial brought a mix of emotions for everyone involved. For Keanu, there was a sense of relief that justice had been served, but also a lingering awareness that true change didn't happen overnight. Daisy's recovery continued to progress, and her playful spirit gradually returned in full force. Yet as Keanu watched her chase after her favorite squeaky toy or curl up beside him on the couch, he couldn't help but think about the bigger picture, the countless animals still suffering silently, waiting for someone to stand up for them. Meanwhile, Marcus Kane began serving his sentence, starting with mandatory community service at a local animal shelter. At first, he approached the task begrudgingly, dragging his feet as he arrived each morning. The shelter staff greeted him cautiously, unsure what to expect from a man convicted of such cruelty. They assigned him simple tasks: cleaning kennels, filling food bowls, and sweeping floors, hoping to keep him busy while minimizing interaction with the animals. But even these mundane chores seemed to irritate Marcus, who muttered under his breath about how stupid the whole situation was. Despite his initial resistance, something unexpected began to shift within Marcus over time. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. One morning, as he was refilling water bowls, a scrappy little terrier mix named Max trotted over and nudged his leg with a wet nose. Startled, Marcus looked down at the dog, expecting it to bark or growl. Instead, Max wagged his tail enthusiastically, his big brown eyes filled with trust and affection. For a moment, Marcus froze, unsure how to react. Then, hesitantly, he reached out and patted Max's head. To his surprise, the dog leaned into the touch, clearly craving attention. That small interaction planted a seed in Marcus's mind. Over the next few days, he found himself drawn to Max and other dogs at the shelter. Some were lively and energetic, bouncing around with boundless enthusiasm. Others were quieter, their eyes reflecting years of neglect or abandonment. Each one had its own story, its own struggles. And yet, they all shared an unshakable resilience. Even after everything they'd endured, they still sought connection, still trusted humans despite the pain they had caused. As Marcus spent more time caring for the animals, he began to see them not as mere creatures, but as individuals with personalities, quirks, and emotions. He noticed how some dogs flinched at sudden movements, reminding him uncomfortably of Daisy cowering on the pavement. He saw the way volunteers cooed softly to frightened cats, patiently earning their trust. Slowly, the walls around Marcus's heart began to crumble. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel empathy, not just for the animals, but for the people working tirelessly to care for them. One afternoon, as Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor playing tug-of-war with Max, a volunteer named Sarah approached him. She was a kind-hearted woman in her late 30s who had dedicated her life to rescuing animals. "You're good with him," she said, nodding toward Max. Marcus shrugged, brushing off the compliment. "Nah, he's just easygoing." Sarah smiled knowingly. "Maybe, but you've got a way with animals. You should be proud of that." Her words caught Marcus off guard. No one had praised him in years, not sincerely anyway. He mumbled a quiet, thanks, avoiding eye contact, but the comment lingered in his mind long after she walked away. During his anger management sessions, Marcus struggled at first. The therapist challenged him to confront his past behaviors, asking difficult questions about why he acted out so recklessly. At times, Marcus grew defensive, snapping back or shutting down entirely. But as the weeks went by, he found himself opening up more, sharing fragments of his childhood marked by instability and neglect. He realized that much of his bravado stemmed from a deep-seated need to prove himself, to appear tough and untouchable when inside, he felt anything but. The turning point came during one particularly raw session. The therapist asked Marcus to imagine himself in Daisy's place, kicked and left trembling on the ground. "How would you feel?" she probed gently. Marcus hesitated, his throat tightening as he tried to push the thought away. But the image persisted. Daisy's wide, frightened eyes staring up at him, her body shaking with pain. For the first time, Marcus allowed himself to truly empathize with her, to feel the fear and betrayal she must have felt in that moment. "I'd feel broken," he admitted quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Tears welled in his eyes, surprising even himself. It was a rare moment of vulnerability, one that left him feeling exposed yet strangely lighter, as if shedding a burden he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. Back at the shelter, Marcus threw himself into his work with renewed purpose. He learned how to groom dogs properly, how to comfort anxious cats, and how to read the subtle cues animals use to communicate their needs. The staff noticed the change in him, commenting on his growing dedication and patience. One day, as he helped bathe a particularly skittish puppy, a volunteer remarked, "You're really coming along, Marcus. Keep this up and you might just find your calling here." Marcus chuckled nervously, brushing off the idea. But privately, he wondered if there was truth to her words. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was making a difference, even if it was in small, seemingly insignificant ways. Helping animals heal gave him a sense of fulfillment he'd never experienced before. Word of Marcus's transformation eventually reached Keanu through mutual acquaintances. Though skeptical at first, Keanu decided to visit the shelter himself, curious to see whether the man who had once shown such callousness could truly change. When he arrived, he spotted Marcus kneeling beside a golden retriever, carefully combing tangles from its fur. The sight was jarring. This wasn't the same brash, reckless biker who had kicked Daisy without a second thought. Keanu approached slowly, giving Marcus a chance to notice him. When their eyes met, Marcus stood awkwardly, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Hey," he muttered, looking anywhere but directly at Keanu. There was a long pause before Keanu spoke. "I heard you've been doing good work here," he said simply, gesturing to the dogs milling about happily. Marcus shrugged again, though a faint blush crept into his cheeks. "Just trying to make things right," he replied gruffly. For a moment, neither man said anything. Then Keanu extended a hand, offering a tentative smile. "Thank you for apologizing to Daisy. I know it wasn't easy." Marcus hesitated, then shook Keanu's hand firmly. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For everything, I was wrong." Keanu nodded, accepting the apology with grace. He didn't say it aloud, but he recognized the effort it must have taken for Marcus to admit fault and seek redemption. Forgiveness wasn't always easy, especially when wounds ran deep, but Keanu believed in the power of second chances, for both humans and animals alike. As Keanu toured the shelter, interacting with the animals and chatting with volunteers, he couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them all here. What had started as a tragic encounter between a cruel act and an innocent victim had transformed into something far greater, a story of growth, understanding, and hope. Marcus's transformation reminded Keanu that even those who seemed irredeemable could find their way back to kindness, if given the opportunity. Leaving the shelter that day, Keanu felt a renewed sense of purpose. Justice for Daisy had been achieved, but the fight against animal cruelty was far from over. With Daisy trotting happily at his side, Keanu resolved to continue using his platform to advocate for those without voices, ensuring that stories like theirs would inspire others to take action. Together, they proved that compassion could triumph over cruelty, one step, one heart, and one life at a time. Months had passed since the trial, and life in the quiet suburban neighborhood began to settle into a new rhythm. The scars of the past were slowly healing, not just for Daisy, but also for the community that had rallied together to seek justice. Keanu continued his daily walks with Daisy, their bond stronger than ever. Her tail wagged furiously as she bounded ahead, her playful energy a testament to her full recovery. Watching her run freely, Keanu felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for her resilience but for the lessons her story had taught everyone who followed it. The transformation of Marcus Kane remained one of the most remarkable outcomes of the ordeal. His time at the animal shelter had profoundly changed him, turning what could have been a mere punishment into an opportunity for growth. He no longer resembled the reckless biker who once thrived on chaos and intimidation. Instead, he became known around the shelter as someone dependable, patient, and genuinely caring. Volunteers often joked that if they didn't know his backstory, they'd never guess he was once convicted of animal cruelty. Marcus's dedication to the animals earned him a special role at the shelter. He became the go-to person for handling, particularly nervous or traumatized pets. He had a knack for calming them down, using soft words and gentle gestures to earn their trust. One dog, a pit bull named Rocky, who had been abused by his previous owner, would only let Marcus approach him during feeding times. Over weeks of consistent care, Rocky finally allowed Marcus to pet him, a breakthrough that brought tears to the eyes of the shelter staff. For Marcus, moments like these weren't just rewarding, they were redemptive. Keanu kept tabs on Marcus's progress through occasional visits to the shelter. Though their interactions remained brief and somewhat awkward, there was mutual respect between them now. During one visit, Marcus approached Keanu hesitantly, holding a leash attached to a timid little terrier mix. "This is Luna," he said, softly gesturing to the dog. "She reminds me of Daisy." Keanu nodded, crouching down to offer Luna a gentle pat. The dog sniffed his hand cautiously before leaning into the touch. "She's beautiful," Keanu remarked, standing back up to face Marcus. "You're doing great work here." Marcus shifted uncomfortably, clearly unused to receiving praise. "Thanks," he mumbled. After a pause, he added, "I meant what I said before. I'm sorry. Not just for Daisy, but for all the stuff I did wrong. I want to keep making things right." Keanu smiled faintly, recognizing the sincerity in Marcus's voice. "That's all anyone can ask for," he replied. "Keep going. You've already made a difference." As word of Marcus's turnaround spread, the community began to see him in a new light. Neighbors who had once feared or distrusted him now greeted him warmly when he walked by with a leash in hand, accompanied by one of the shelter dogs in need of exercise. Children who used to scatter at the sound of his motorcycle now waved shyly, their curiosity outweighing their fear. Even local businesses started supporting the shelter, donating supplies or hosting fundraisers in its name. It was as though Marcus's redemption had sparked a ripple effect, inspiring others to contribute to the cause he had inadvertently championed. For Keanu, this collective shift reinforced his belief in the power of compassion and accountability. He used every platform available to him, social media, interviews, public appearances, to highlight the importance of treating animals with kindness and respect. His advocacy extended beyond Daisy's story, shining a spotlight on broader issues, like adoption, spaying, neutering programs, and stricter penalties for animal abusers. Fans responded enthusiastically, organizing charity drives and volunteering at shelters in honor of Daisy. The hashtag, Justice for Daisy, evolved into .love for all animals, symbolizing a movement fueled by empathy and action. One day, Keanu received an invitation from a national animal welfare organization to speak at their annual gala. Hesitant at first, he preferred staying out of the limelight. He ultimately agreed, knowing it was an opportunity to amplify the message further. On the night of the event, he stood on stage alongside Daisy, who wore a dainty floral collar, specially made for the occasion. As cameras flashed and applause filled the room, Keanu shared Daisy's journey, emphasizing how her suffering had galvanized so many people to take a stand against cruelty. When we witness injustice, it's easy to feel powerless, he told the audience, his voice steady and heartfelt. But Daisy reminded me, and hopefully all of you, that even small actions can create big change. Whether it's adopting a rescue dog, volunteering at a shelter, or simply speaking up when you see something wrong, every effort matters. Together, we can build a world where no animal has to endure pain or neglect. His speech received a standing ovation, with many attendees wiping away tears. That evening, the organization announced the launch of the Daisy Fund, a grant program designed to support grassroots initiatives focused on animal welfare. Keanu donated generously to kickstart the fund, encouraging others to contribute as well. By the end of the night, pledges poured in from across the country, ensuring the fund's success. Back home, Keanu celebrated quietly with Daisy, reflecting on how far they had come. What had begun as a devastating incident had blossomed into something extraordinary, a catalyst for change, a testament to resilience and a reminder of the enduring bond between humans and animals. Daisy curled up at his feet, her breathing slow and steady, content in the knowledge that she was loved unconditionally. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his work at the shelter, finding purpose in helping creatures who couldn't defend themselves. He even adopted Luna, the timid terrier mix who had reminded him of Daisy. Bringing her home marked a new chapter in his life, one defined not by recklessness, but by responsibility and care. Though he still carried the weight of his past mistakes, he embraced the possibility of a brighter future, one shaped by the lessons he had learned. In the years that followed, Keanu and Marcus crossed paths occasionally, always exchanging polite nods or brief conversations. They weren't friends in the traditional sense, but they shared a unique connection forged through adversity and redemption. Their stories served as powerful reminders that while cruelty could leave lasting scars, compassion had the power to heal, even in the most unexpected ways. Ultimately, Daisy's legacy transcended her own tale of survival. She became a symbol of hope, inspiring countless individuals to stand up for those who couldn't speak for themselves. Through her, Keanu discovered a renewed passion for advocacy, channeling his influence into creating meaningful change. And through her, Marcus found a path toward forgiveness, not just from others but from himself. Life moved forward as it always does, carrying with it the echoes of lessons learned and lives transformed. In the heart of that peaceful suburban neighborhood, where children laughed and birds chirped happily, a scruffy terrier mix named Daisy trotted beside her beloved owner, her tail wagging with joy. Nearby, a reformed biker walked another dog, his steps steady and purposeful. Both men and their dogs represented different sides of the same truth, that kindness, resilience, and second chances could turn even the darkest moments into opportunities for light. And so, under the golden glow of a setting sun, the story came full circle, not with bitterness or regret, but with hope. Hope that compassion would always triumph over cruelty. Hope that every act of love, no matter how small, could make the world a better place. And hope that somewhere amidst the chaos of life there would always be room for redemption.